It is second helping on the Monday after week one of college football action in the number one league in all of collegiate athletics, the Southeastern Conference. Travis Reier, alongside my great friend and co host, Brent Beaird, back with you right here on Reier on YouTube. Lot to talk about, Brent. We've got some superlatives from week one, and then we'll go around the league and talk about what we saw, what we liked, maybe what we didn't like. And it's just great to be able to talk about a lot of Southeastern Conference football. And I know our show mascot right there, Chino, is very fired up too.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, what a great week. 5 days of college football was just wonderful. Yeah, when we learned a lot, and we'll get into this later in the week. But Trav, to say the least, the competition revs up this coming Saturday compared to last Saturday.
It does, and it was a mixed bag for the league.
It
You know,
was.
you had some promising and kind of expected performances when you think about Georgia, you think about
Mhm.
Texas, you think about Alabama in game one of the Kalen DeBoer era. Tennessee, very impressive. We'll get more into all that. Auburn taking care of business against an FCS opponent. We'll get more into those. Ole Miss as well, but you had the Florida performance, if you want to call it that,
Ooh,
against Miami and Gainesville. And then Sunday night, the game with LSU and USC out in Las Vegas. We anticipated that being the game of the week, perhaps.
yes,
When it
yes.
was all said and done, that matchup, top 25 matchup there, and the anticipation of the quarterback changes for both teams. We talked about this too. We'll go ahead and start our superlatives for the week with that game of the week. Anticipated both those
Mhm.
quarterbacks playing at a high level because we had seen enough of Garrett Nussmeier for LSU in the past, and even for SC, Miller Moss in the bowl game after Caleb Williams sat out at the end of last season was very impressive. I thought both the quarterbacks delivered. I thought both teams delivered. I think if there was a surprise for me in that game, and it probably was for LSU too, was that outside of kind of a stretch of John Emery doing some
Yeah.
good things at the running back position,
Hmm.
I don't think LSU in that run game with that offensive line was
No.
able to finish the game like myself and so many others thought they would.
Well, and they didn't finish the game on both sides of the ball, did they, Trav? That they had chances for that defense after they got ahead to kind of shut SC down, but they were not able to do it. And you mentioned Miller Moss, 27 of 36 for 378 is quite a performance, to say the least. And they probably did enough to win. I get Garrett Nussmeier, I think, did too. Got a good game, 304 yards, 29 of 38. But again, in the fourth quarter, too much complacency, probably on both sides of the ball. LSU's defense had a chance, and they have improved. I think both these defenses have improved in a lot of ways. But boy, oh boy, anybody, Trav, who did not see Brian Kelly after that game and his anger toward his own team, he said for the first time in 3 years, he was he was on fire, was he not? Because he knew they let one slip away.
Yeah, well, whose responsibility is that ultimately, though?
Well, it's Kelly's,
Uh,
absolutely.
And to me, that's too often the case with Brian Kelly. Just feels like he's pretty quick to throw his teams under
Hmm.
the bus, and
Hmm.
he did kind of as he got into it, took some accountability for that. But if I'm an LSU fan, I'm give me a break, BK. You know,
Hmm.
we haven't won an opener yet. He does have the win over Alabama a couple of years ago. That gives you some cachet and some sort of cred with that fan base. That's going to help him. But I thought LSU defensively was improved under Blake
Yes,
Baker. This
no
was
doubt.
this was my big question, or my one
Hmm.
big thing for this game was which of these new defensive coordinators, Danton Lynn for USC and Baker for Missouri, would have their respective defense playing
Hmm.
at the highest level. I thought both the defenses were vastly improved, but at the end of the day, you're right. LSU couldn't finish the game on defense. I'll say this, when you have that kind of offensive line, though, you expect to be able to take
Yes.
the game in the fourth quarter with the run game and take the game on offense. And I think that's what had Kelly frustrated more than anything. He knew there was improvement on the defensive side, and he knew the game was right where he wanted it in the fourth quarter with his offensive line and Emory playing well and picking up chunks there in the second half, and still couldn't get home. So, hey, credibility, good stuff for SC moving forward. Now
Mm-hmm.
for LSU, it's a FCS opponent. Then you get into SEC play a couple of weeks from now at South Carolina, and we'll talk about the Gamecocks coming up a little bit later as well. What about the surprise of the week for you, Brent, in terms of what we saw around the Southeastern Conference over the last 4 days or so? Where would that land for you? Surprise of the week.
Surprise of the week's in Nashville, Tennessee, with the Vanderbilt Commodores and what they were able to do. What Clark Lee did with this team was very impressive. And look, I'll give you something that a lot of people probably aren't talking about. When he hired Jerry Kill, the New Mexico State coach, that was a tremendous hire on a lot of levels. Kill has been there. He understands. Man, if you want a really good assistant, then that will be one that I think to go with. I thought, Travis, I'll be honest with you, I thought they were going to blow the game after they missed the field goal in regulation. But Diego Pavia, and I'll let you talk about our guy, right?
Our guy,
Just,
Diego.
man,
Diego the door.
woo!
Diego Flutie. All the T-shirts I can come up with right now for my guy, our guy, Diego.
That's right. Absolutely.
Uh, yeah, I'm going to talk about Vandy here in just a little bit, but hey, the surprise of the week for me was the ineptitude of the University of Florida football team.
Oh.
One thing to lose, and give a lot of credit to Miami. They are improved. They hit the portal, and not just at quarterback, upgraded that football team
Yeah,
significantly. Had me
absolutely.
thinking a little bit about Florida State from a year ago, watching this Miami team. But Cam Ward was out of his mind. That being said, year 3 of the Billy Napier tenure is underway. And even if you are selling that program builder moniker that we did get from Napier upon his hiring by the Gators, you got to show more than that in game 1 of year 3, even against a formidable opponent in the Miami Hurricanes. You just, at every area of the Gator football team, Brent, just a mismatch.
Yes.
I mean, what's most discouraging for me if I'm a Florida fan is the one-on-ones that you saw in open field or
Yeah. Oh,
at
yeah.
the line of scrimmage, and your team was absolutely taken apart. We can talk about should Billy Napier be the play caller. We can talk about the defensive side and that coordinator hire from a year or so ago and how that's worked out for the Gators. But just in terms of personnel development and acquisition, oof, that was especially tough on the eyes. I'm not surprised Miami won the game at all. Just very surprised that Florida was incredibly overmatched in just about every area of that game.
Well, and the game basically over at halftime, and certainly in the third quarter. Look, the thing that really drives coaches crazy, and that there's absolutely no excuse for. And Florida did this twice. So look, this happened in the league. Major Burns took his helmet off in the LSU game, but man, oh man, in this Florida Miami game, really looked undisciplined. Really, at times looked like they were not prepared. But Trev, the thing that really drives fans crazy is you're close to getting your opponent off the field, not once but twice, and then you've got 2 just absolutely foolish personal foul to extend the drive with Miami. And Trev, as you said, as good as Miami is right now with Ward and those skill position players, the last thing you need to do is give them the ball for an extra period of time.
Yeah, I brought the safety on the one blitz, and it was almost as if the safety said, look, if I'm going to run all this way, I'm getting hit on the quarterback.
Yeah,
Well,
really.
great. You did, and you kept a drive alive. And you're right, with the mismatches being what they were pretty much across the board for the Gators in this game, couldn't afford free drive extension, free first downs, those type of things for the Miami Hurricanes. So that's my surprise of the week. You've got Vanderbilt as yours. What about our players of the week for the Southeastern Conference? Who do you got, Brent?
Well, I still go back to Pavia and what he did at Vanderbilt. And to me, that was look. And I don't want to make too much of this, but you and I both know the history of this football team. This could be a game. I'm not saying it will be, but this could be a season changing performance, making a statement that yes, we're here and we're tired of being doormats. And again, we may not have the roster that we want, but look, I'll say this, and we cover the ACC on a regular basis. And Trev, there was a lot of noise about Virginia Tech. I mean, maybe even being good enough to be in the ACC championship game. So still to go out and make that kind of a statement, frankly, is just something that it has impressed a lot of people, and it should.
Yeah, Diego Pavia. Pavia is my player of the week. I mean, I'm a big Diego guy. 190 passing yards, over 100 rushing yards. He's that quarterback too. When you get in that overtime scenario with the condensed field,
right,
that's when he can be a big problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand, Virginia Tech had that kind of guy too, and Kyron Drones, but Pavia, it's amazing. You think about the programs now that he has led to pretty significant heights already. New Mexico State, if it wasn't the worst FBS program in the country, and you said it with Jerry Kill too, give him credit, the former head coach, and also probably a lot to do with Pavia coming to Vanderbilt with him from Las Cruces. But just a fun guy to watch, Diego Pavia. And absolutely, we're in a unanimous thought there with our player of the week from Vanderbilt. What about the team on the rise in the Southeastern Conference after week one? Who do you got there, Brent?
I look, and I know they've been predicted to be that way, but I'll give that to, and I know it's very early, but I'll throw one in for Tennessee. Frankly, now Nico was as advertised, 314 yards, 3 touchdowns, and that game was over early. Now they've got some good ones coming up, like NC State will certainly be more of a challenge. But basically everything went right for them. And it was Chattanooga. But at the same time, defensively, they played well. They're able to run the ball. I still think that's going to be the key for the season. But certainly people talking already about Nico and the Heisman race, how much could Tennessee challenge? And they certainly helped themselves on Saturday.
Yeah, I've got 3 teams for this one. I'm almost like a Nick Saban depth chart with all these oars I've got in here. I've got Oklahoma or Auburn or Tennessee, and I thought those 3 teams were similar terms of how impressive they were in their opener. Now, I give Oklahoma probably a little more credit because that was an FBS opponent in Temple that the Sooners took apart on Friday night in Norman, but yeah, I thought Auburn did exactly what it needed to do against an FCS opponent in Alabama A&M. We'll talk a little bit more about that coming up too. And same thing for Tennessee. Nico, Dante Thornton Jr. at the wide receiver position with a big day. Dylan Sampson stepping in there at running back. Still some things we're going to find out. Yeah, you're right. With NC State coming up, although NC State had its struggles with an FCS opponent in Western Carolina under Kerwin Bell. Up there at Western Carolina now, former Florida quarterback. But, a lot more to learn. Those 3 teams kind of fell into that category for me week one. What about the team on the decline? Is it too early to kind of point to that team? I mean, we're just a week into it. Who do you got there, Brent?
Listen, I've got South Carolina at this point, and it's hard to say that, but look, give them credit. They won the game. Trav, you and I have talked about the having Wood, Rocket, Sanders make a difference. Well, he did in his first game. He averaged 4 yards a carry, 88 rushing yards, had a touchdown. I thought the defense, when it really had to, probably saved the day for Carolina. Look, Old Dominion's a good team, certainly within their tier or their division. But I'm telling you, Trav, with about 6 minutes and change to go in the game, Old Dominion had this thing virtually almost won at that point. So Lennar Sellers really was not impressive at all. And again, he needs some time. We understand that. 10 of 23 for 114 yards. Probably did his best work rushing the ball more than anything else. But man, oh man, they've got Kentucky and Lexington coming up. And Trav, I don't know if you saw Shane Beamer in the interview after the game, but he had, Trav, didn't he have that look of well, this year may not be going real well, and it may start going downhill.
Shane looked like he needed a shot or two of some brown water after that, at the end of that interview that we saw there, that made so many of our social media timelines. I'm with you on South Carolina. We're in lockstep on that choice. You're right. Sellers and Rocket Sanders combined to rush for around 165 in that win over ODU. Otherwise, Sellers was sacked 4 times in the game. What's that going to look like coming up with Kentucky? And then LSU beyond that, after you get Kentucky. South Carolina looks like they need another couple of games with not even the ODUs, with more of the South Carolina States or maybe Furman, something like that. They do not look ready for SEC play.
Absolutely not.
But unfortunately for Shane and his team, that's coming next week with Big Blue. Hey, let's talk about the team with the most to prove as we move into week 2. Brent, which club is that for you?
That's I'm gonna put Auburn in there with Cal coming up. Auburn really needs to be clicking on all cylinders coming up because they've got all these games at home. And then they don't have any games at home in October. Now I'm with you. They really started off well. They deserve a lot of credit. I know it was Alabama A&M, but they dispatched of an inferior opponent pretty quickly. Peyton Thorne, 322 yards, 4 touchdowns, ran the ball for almost 50 more, and they blew them out by 70. And I get that, but that's kind of the thing that I want to see. Will we see some steady improvement? And look, Cal's no threat to be in the playoffs at this point, but at the same point, Cal can run the ball. Can Auburn stop that? And can Auburn build on what they have been doing? So good start with challenges ahead.
I'm going to go Arkansas here. It was a feel-good opener for the Razorbacks out in Little Rock last Thursday night. Talon Green was what you hoped he would be initially at the quarterback position. Bobby Petrino back with the Razorbacks, and that offense was humming at a pretty high level. Again, considering the competition, not very good in Pine Bluff. Stakes go up considerably when you go on the road this week to Stillwater, Oklahoma, to take on OSU. So I'm going to go Arkansas there. We know what a critical start to the season it is for Sam Pittman in that position of head coach out there. So I'll go with the Arkansas Razorbacks when we talk about that. I hear you on Auburn too. I'm not sure if Cal can really challenge Auburn in a way like it did out in Berkeley a year ago, but it's definitely a step up in competition when you go from Alabama A&M to the Bears of California. So let's go around the Southeastern Conference a little bit too, Brent, because we wanted to touch on really all of the action from week 1. And what we'll do is we will pull up some of the results, starting with last Friday's games. We talked about Arkansas and Pine Bluff, again, Razorbacks take care of business in ease. Missouri and Murray State. We really haven't talked about Mizzou so far on the show, but again, a game that you expected the Tigers to work through quite easily. They were able to do that. Brady Cook with 228 passing yards, Luther Burden with 49 receiving yards. I guess no surprises there in terms of the outcome and maybe what you saw from both Missouri and Arkansas.
Yeah, I would agree. I think for Missouri, losing Blake Baker to LSU, they wondered where they were going. The defense played really well. Now, again, we have to consider the opponent in this situation. But in Torino Pride Jr., that's a great name. He had a pick six. So that was impressive. Brady Cook does Brady Cook things. Luther Burden, sometimes it's just man against boys, frankly, with him. But a pretty good start. Then they've got Buffalo, so that will continue. But this is a team for Eli, and I'll say this, Trav. Eli laid down the gauntlet for his fan base. And they basically showed up for that game. So I give them credit for that. But my goodness, if you're Missouri fans, you won double-digit games last year, and you've got the promise of maybe doing that again this year. They should be showing up. They should be excited.
Yeah, Gene Stallings once said the fun is in the winning.
Yeah.
And look, if you're Missouri and considering some of the depths that program has been through, there's been highs. There's no doubt about it. Yeah, it wouldn't bother me with the schedule. If I'm a Missouri fan and we're winning on a consistent basis,
absolutely.
Yeah, I'll be in Como each and every opportunity I would get. So we moved to Friday night. We talked about this a little bit earlier too, in terms of teams on the rise. 16th ranked Oklahoma, impressive in taking out a Temple program that we talked about last week. Not exactly still in that window of, say, Al Golden and Matt Rule and Steve Adazio, when the Owls actually were a very formidable G5 opponent. But still, you got to see some good things from Jackson Arnold.
That's right.
In his first regular season start behind center for the Sooners. And then the defense, what you would expect it to be under Brent Venables and with what the Sooners bring back on that side of the ball. Again, questions about that offensive line too. I think in terms of an initial test, it was what it needed to be. You get Houston this week, and the Cougars transitioning to Willie Fitz as the new head coach got thumped at home by UNLV. Barry Odom out there at UNLV.
That's right.
Previously the head coach at Missouri, defensive coordinator at Arkansas, doing some good things out in Vegas. But that ramp up that we've talked about, Brent, I think it works pretty well for OU going from Houston this week to Lane, and then you get into Tennessee and SEC play.
Oh, yeah, I would agree. The Oklahoma defense forced 6 takeaways. I tell you what, anytime you can do that, you're playing well. So that was impressive. You mentioned Arnold being sharp, 17 to 25, 141. He didn't really have to do much, frankly. But they love Deion Burks, who is a Purdue transfer at wide receiver. But the thing I just wanted to mention on is the offensive line struggling on third down. I mean, Trav, you blow your opponent out, but you're 0 for 11 on third down, and a lot of that's with your offensive line. So Brent Venables still has some things he can work on with this team during this week.
Yeah, and the ramp up we talked about, you better get that right, because James Pierce, Amari Thomas, Tennessee coming to Norman in the not too distant future, and will get after your quarterback if you cannot protect at a high level. So we move into Saturday's action. We talked earlier about our player of the week for week 1, Diego Pavia at the quarterback position for the Commodores. I got to think Clark Lee too liked the way that game finished, because he's a defensive guy in overtime, and his guys closed out the game on that side of the ball.
Very impressive. Again, I know we can't stop talking about Diego, but what I loved about him was kind of about this team. Diego goes to the huddle, Travis, and says, "Coach, just give me the ball."
Yeah,
I mean, you got to like that, don't you?
love it.
In a guy at the end, and Trav, look, you and I have been following Vanderbilt football for a long time. How many guys have gone in the huddle and with the coach and said that?
It's been a while for the Commodores. Probably got to go back to the James Franklin era for more on
Mm-hmm.
that. But absolutely love the guy. Give some other guys their flowers too. Quincy Skinner Jr. at the wide receiver
Mm-hmm.
position. And again, defensively, I thought, especially in that first half, things kind of came apart a
Yeah,
little bit in the second half, especially in that secondary.
right.
Um, had some, I think, departures that impacted that. But
Mm-hmm.
hey, it's all beautiful right now on the
It
West
sure
End in
is.
Nashville after week one. You know, we haven't even talked about the top ranked team in the country.
Yeah,
That's how
really.
business-like it's become. If you
Yes.
want to just talk about performances of the week from a team,
Mm-hmm.
well, then that would be the Georgia Bulldogs because
Mm-hmm.
in very methodical fashion, as that game wore on at Mercedes-Benz Stadium midday on Saturday, it was prototype Georgia, even without Trevor
It was.
Etienne, even down to about a third or fourth back in that rotation. Ultimately, the physicality and just the methodical nature, like we've seen from Alabama in the past too, it just proves to be too much. My one big thing for this game last week here on the channel was what would Clemson be able to get out of Phil Maffa,
Yeah.
their
Right.
running back and their run game? Well, he rushed for 59 yards. That looks okay on
Mm-hmm.
paper. It was going to take more than that. And so ultimately, it's Georgia that does the Georgia things. How about Landon Humphreys, the Vanderbilt transfer? Comes up big, especially I think in the second half of that game. I like Nate Frazier a lot too. I know we need to talk about
Yeah.
Carson Beck because he was good, but Nate Frazier, the true freshman running back for Georgia, really puts off Josh Jacobs vibes for me. About the same size, has a similar
Mm-hmm.
running style,
Mm-hmm.
won't be denied at about 5'10, 210 pounds. Hey, look, I know you at some point in the near future expect Trevor Etienne back, but Nate Frazier is going to have a place in this offense as long as he's healthy.
And see what was impressive about that is you got basically your top two backs who are out of the game for various reasons, and you got guys like that who step up and really play well. Frazier, 9 carries, 67 yards is like tackling a bowling ball. Then he catches a pass for 24. Arian Smith had 5 catches for 56. So he was impressive. But again, somebody on that opposite side of the ball is going to step up, Trav. How about Jalen Walker and what he was able to do? There was later in that game, he basically stopped himself 2 Clemson drives. So no doubt that defense stepped up. Clemson only had 188 yards, 3.62 yards a carry. Georgia 7.45. So they really stepped up. 11 transfers for Kirby on that. I think that's a great point that you made. Or are they in that Nick Saban Alabama situation, Trav, where you just look up, you see the score, and you just go, well, ho hum, that's the way it is. But that's what they build in Athens right now.
Yeah, I mean, like what we've seen from Alabama under Nick Saban, it can be 6-0 at the half and feel more like 24 to
Yeah,
nothing.
absolutely.
I mean, the scoreboard says 6-0, but if you're on the other sideline, it
Mm-hmm.
feels a lot worse than that. And you're trying to
Yes.
kind of stay motivated, encourage, hey guys, it's just 6-0.
Yeah.
But the kind of flow of the game tells you the levee is about to break in
Yes.
the second half, and that's exactly what happened. Let's talk a little bit more about Tennessee's season opening win over the Mocs at Chattanooga. 45 to nothing at the half. You talked about Nico, 314 yards, all of that in the first half. I thought the stat line offensively for Tennessee went exactly the way you wanted it to. Nico, 314 passing yards.
Mhm.
Dylan Sampson rushes for 124. And then Dante Thornton Jr., the Oregon transfer, who we saw some of a year ago with 105 receiving yards. Good to see Brew McCoy back from injury and
Yes.
productive. So this went
Right.
about the script for Josh Heupel's team.
Well, and the thing I want to add is about the zero. That when we weren't quite sure what we get from this Vol defense, but they certainly stepped up. And I'm sure you picked up on this. So much, all the attention goes to the offense. Trav, we had basically a record, didn't we? Number of shutouts in the SEC. We understand the competition, but look, whoever you are, you're going to play a lot of players in a game like that. And to keep a shutout for all these teams, that's as impressive to me about the league this week as anything.
Yeah, and specifically with Tennessee, that's the one thing you want to see more of from this team.
No doubt.
Miami and Florida, we'll touch on that briefly here. Unfortunately for the Gators, on top of everything else, Graham Mertz goes out. We understand he's in concussion protocol now. Samford up next. Is this a prime opportunity for a true freshman at quarterback? I thought DJ Lagway, what we saw of him was pretty good.
It did.
At times. You saw sort of the skill set in the toolbox that brought that 5-star ranking to Gainesville along with him. But boy, you talk about salt in the wound. Perhaps also losing your starting quarterback, that added to it.
Yeah, it really did. And Trav, right now, Billy Napier 1-8 against Tennessee, Georgia, LSU, FSU, and Miami. And listen, you and I have covering this conference for many decades. When you got that kind of record against your rivals, there's a lot of talk behind the scenes in Gainesville this week, is it not?
Yeah, not even behind the scenes. I think it's out in front even to this point for, unfortunately, Billy Napier. Also, mid-afternoon last Saturday, the Texas Longhorns, very impressive in a 52-0 shutout of the visiting Rams of Colorado State. I talked about this last week. I thought Braden Fowler Nicolosi, the quarterback for Colorado State, would provide a bit of a challenge for the Longhorns. He throws for just 59 yards in the game. Quinn Ewers goes for 260, but hey, there's a backup quarterback named Arch Manning
That's right.
on this Texas team. So it's Arch that we actually hear a good bit about.
Do you think, Trav, that things in practice may be revved up a little bit this week and anticipating that trip to Michigan? And again, Michigan had their own issues. They've lost a lot of players, but they're still a really good roster that's there. I would imagine the vibe in that building is going to be changed considerably, probably starting yesterday.
I would think so. And, you're expecting big things, obviously, out of this Texas team. And there's no reason to think after that performance Saturday that those expectations are only going to ramp up moving forward. We talked about South Carolina, a 4-point win over the Monarchs of ODU. Again, looking for positives from the situation, but it's hard to, again, considering what awaits on the immediate future where the schedule is concerned.
Going to Kentucky, and Kentucky was impressive when they were able to get on the field in between thunderstorms. But that's going to be tough. This is a big week for them, Trav. That they really need to be competitive against Kentucky. The North Sellers really needs to be able to give them a spark, because good and well that Kentucky defense. Trav, I'm sure the mantra this week is when Rocket Sanders gets the ball, you find out where he is immediately.
Kentucky, interesting too, because really didn't have a full opportunity due to weather in week one to kind of, fine tune some things maybe that Mark Stoops wanted to, with that matchup and SEC play here on the immediate horizon for the Wildcats. So as we move along here, Mississippi State, game one of the Jeff Levy tenure there in Starkville, I'd say according to plan for the Bulldogs. 49-point win over the Colonels of EKU. Blake Shapen, the Baylor transfer, with some nice numbers, and trip to Arizona State, though, coming up for the Dogs. I think that'll be a lot more telling this week.
And I can tell you this. This is a game when we mentioned Florida a couple of times. I'm going to tie these two together. Florida goes to Starkville in a few weeks.
Oof.
And Trav, I'm just telling you, the last thing Billy Napier needs is to lose a game on the road in the SEC to a first-year SEC coach. So there's a lot of water under the bridge that needs to happen before those two they could come up. But Chapin, who was at SEC Media Days, I thought was very impressive. The thing that I liked about Chapin more than anything else, and if Mike Leach was there, he'd have said the same thing. There's a zero Trav of that interception. So 3 touchdowns and 0 interceptions is a pretty good ratio.
Probably bittersweet for Mississippi State fans, too, to see Woody Marks playing
Really?
for USC on Sunday night and running for
yeah.
that game-winning touchdown against the LSU Tigers.
Woo.
But overall, good stuff for Mississippi State as they prepare to head out west to take on a Big 12 opponent in Arizona State. Still a little weird saying that, isn't it? Ole Miss with 76 points in a win over the Purple Paladins of Furman on Saturday night in Oxford. Jackson Dart accounts for 6 touchdowns from the quarterback position. Trey Harris with a big night catching the football. Nearly 800 yards of offense for Lane Kiffin. And again, a team like Missouri that you anticipate just continuing to roll in large part because of this early schedule.
Well, and I'm going to say again what I said a minute ago about some of these other SEC defensive efforts. 76-0. I'm as impressed with the 0 as I am anything else because I know they played a lot of players at this point. And again, that's going to be and they've got Middle Tennessee, and they may do the same thing to them. But Trav, the reality is what we need to see is an improvement on defense for this Rebel team to keep going where they'd like to be going, which is the playoffs.
Yeah, we anticipate that being the case in large part because of the continued acquisitions on that side of the ball for Pete Golding, the coordinator. But you're right. It's something you want to actually see before you put maybe a lot of stock into it. I think Ole Miss, though, under Golding has improved.
They
and
have.
So with better pieces this year, got to think that improvement should only continue. Western Kentucky traveled to Tuscaloosa to start the Kalen DeBoer era with the Crimson Tide, Brent, on Saturday night. Alabama with a 42-point first half. Got a couple of takeaways from safety Keon Sabb, who not only intercepted TJ Finley passes, but returned them in a way that he helped set up that Alabama offense on the short field. It wasn't exactly a dynamic start for Alabama on that side of the ball. Had some sort of bizarre issues, an injury to your starting left tackle and pregame warmups with Caden Proctor. Then you had some helmet issues with your center and your left guard. So it was a weird start in a lot of ways for the Alabama offense specifically. Crimson Tide, though, settles in. Jalen Milroe throws for 200 yards on just 9 pass attempts. Justice Haynes, 102 rushing yards. Jam Miller looked good at the running back position. And Ryan Williams, the true freshman wide receiver at just 17 years old, both of his catches in the game go for touchdowns, 139 receiving yards in all for the freshman from Saraland. Defense holds Western Kentucky, a proud program where offensive football is concerned, to under 150 yards. So, had some penalties. You worry about the injury to your left tackle and Caden Proctor, otherwise about what you would have hoped for if you're an Alabama fan.
I thought it was smooth and efficient most of the time, particularly offensively. The thing that impressed me about Ryan Williams on that second touchdown, breaking a tackle, Trav. How about that? You don't see that all the time from wide receivers, but it certainly showed his strength in being able to do so. But again, kudos to that Alabama defense, particularly that secondary where they were ball hawks a lot of the game, frankly. So all in all, after the I understand they had a real thunderstorm before the game, but they settled down. Jalen Milroe still needs to work on his intermediate passing, and you know that will happen. But I can tell you this, offensively, I love the receivers, but they're going to be able to run the ball, aren't they, Trav? I mean, my goodness, with what they've got in that running back position that goes easily 4 to 5 guys deep. I think that's something as they establish that throughout the year, that's even going to help that passing game even more.
Yeah, look, I think in some ways we're reaching a point with Jalen Milroe where he kind of is what he is.
Yeah.
And he
Yeah.
is a guy that likes to throw the football down the field. So
Mm-hmm.
the check down game, some of those things, it's just not something he's a fan of, I don't think.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
you need to kind of come to grips with that. Is it something that
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure Kalen DeBoer, Nick Sheridan are continuing to harp on? Yes. But he did have some nice throws in the game. He hit Jeremy Bernard, the Washington transfer, on a beauty of a corner route. And even Ryan Williams' second touchdown, that crossing route was exceptionally well
Yeah.
thrown. You're right. Williams, you look at him, you don't think about a tackle breaker,
Mm-hmm.
especially at 17 years old, but he was able to do that. And yeah, defensively, I thought Alabama did some good things too. We've got a viewer here, Jay Blanca, by the way, and we appreciate you live
Yes.
here on Second Helping. And by the way, if you haven't subscribed to our channel here, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now. Hit that notification bell. That way you are alerted to all of our content here on the program. Also, if you'd give us a like, a thumbs up, we'd appreciate that tremendously. Jay asking, what's the deal with Keon Keeley? He was a top 10 recruit nationally last year and isn't even listed on the depth chart. Jay, it's been sort of a position transition for Keon Keeley. He's gone from more of a true edge
Mm-hmm.
outside linebacker type in the previous defense. He's been moved to more of a true defensive end in Kane Womack's approach. Physically, he came to Alabama in need of some time to develop those traits that you have to have at this level and especially in this league. So I think Keon Keeley, more of a developmental
Yeah.
prospect than maybe some people realize, still has a lot of upside and a nice ceiling. But, they do have some other guys at his position right now, like Jamarian Latham, like LT Overton, the Texas A&M transfer, that they're not just going to roll out the red carpet when it comes to reps for any young player, even Keon Keeley. So we'll keep it moving here from Saturday. We'll talk about Alabama's rival, the Auburn Tigers, with that 73-3 win over the visiting Bulldogs of Alabama A&M. Talked about this earlier. Stat line about what you would expect. Peyton
Yeah.
Thorne with 322
Mm-hmm.
passing yards also did a good job running the football. Darquez Hunter with 53 rushing yards. Those freshman wide receivers, though, Brent, that's what you wanted to see if
Yeah.
you're an Auburn
That's
fan.
right.
Cam Coleman, Perry Thompson, Malcolm Simmons with 91 receiving yards as a freshman. So Keon Lambert Smith, the transfer from Penn State, the upgrades on the outside
Oh, yeah.
delivered in the opener for the Auburn Tigers.
Well, and I think the other thing is their running game is probably undervalued with some people. It shouldn't be with Jarquez Hunter and what that group is going to be able to do. But I'm always looking, particularly at Auburn right now, for their line of scrimmage on both sides, which I think did fine. And look, I understand the competition, but Auburn almost had a shutout themselves. So
Yeah.
they are doing well with that. Again, when we mentioned Cal coming up, in the improvement in at least somewhat with the competition. So overall, a big win for the Tigers as they continue to recruit well too.
They do. Doing very well on multiple fronts now under Hugh Freeze. Hank Brown, too, the young quarterback,
Yes.
came in and did some nice things as the backup to Thorne, the redshirt freshman. And we actually, if there was one silver lining to Auburn's Music City Bowl performance against Maryland
Yeah.
to end last season, it may have been Hank Brown in that game. And it
Absolutely.
looks like that's carried over. Very impressive young quarterback for the Auburn Tigers there in the 6'4" Hank Brown. Hey, let's talk about Saturday night. This was a matchup we were anticipating greatly going into it. Notre Dame at Texas A&M. Riley Leonard going against his old coach, Mike Elko, making his debut as the head guy for the Aggies. And boy, offensively,
Oh,
it
yeah.
was not much of a night for
No.
the Texas A&M Aggies. Give Notre Dame a lot of credit, but I had Connor Wegman throwing for more than 100 yards
Woo.
in this game.
Absolutely.
And, we can talk about the injury at running back with Reuben Owens and some of those things, but still, this was a pretty dreadful night for Wegman and the Aggies on that side of the ball.
Yeah, it really was. And I give Notre Dame a lot of credit. They ran the ball well. Their defense was stout. Riley Leonard, I think, was a really good leader during the game. And at this point, a lot of people are expecting Notre Dame to make the playoffs because A&M with Notre Dame's easy schedule was one of the few teams that would probably maybe top 25 ish competition. Weigman 12 of 29. The thing that really hurt Trav was the two interceptions.
Yeah.
In what that in Notre Dame, to their credit, was able to put some points on the board after that. I think A&M gets better, but the thing that we talked about over the last few weeks is just going to take some time. Weigman's got to get improved after that surgery. Their receivers just aren't where they want them to be. Their offensive line certainly is not where they want them to be. Now, look, we're not saying that they can't come out and have a better year. I like Elko and what he's capable of doing, and they've got McNeese next week to work out some of the bugs. But I think Elko knew, Trav, at the end of this game, this was one that slipped away, and they had a real shot at winning this game. It couldn't come through.
Yeah, if there was a silver lining Saturday for Florida fans in terms of what's coming down the road, it was probably the Texas A&M offense, because the Aggies are going to visit Gainesville in the not too distant future. So, hey, there you go. There's your ray of sunshine, Florida fans. that A&M offense on Saturday night in College Station. Also Saturday night, Kentucky, as we talked about earlier, abbreviated performance because of weather. That was a nightmare situation.
It was.
Up in Lexington. Called an official game, 31-0. Didn't get really to the fourth quarter of this one. Brock Vandegrift, the Georgia transfer, though, while he was in there, did what you would want him to do as Kentucky's new starting quarterback. And as we talked about, SEC play cranking up for real for Kentucky, because you get South Carolina this week, and then you've got Georgia coming to town in just a couple of weeks.
Well, we'll certainly know where they are at that point. I just thought Kentucky was tougher, frankly. Vandegrift did well. I mean, he ran the ball a little bit too, which he's got to be careful about that. But he can be a good runner. He certainly comes from that. He learned a lot at Georgia, no doubt. And look, they've got weapons. They use those weapons. So I'm frankly, I think Mark Stoops, despite the weather, had to be pretty pleased with this start and some good things to come for the Cats.
Yeah, it looks like a 9th straight bowl appearance, school record for UK, is very much in the offing when we look down the road. Hey, we'll wrap things up, as we talked about a good bit to start the show. SC and LSU. Any final thoughts on that one from Sunday night, Brent?
I think I think offensively, LSU did okay. I think they've got some things they can build on. I'm with you. The defense is better, but the main thing that's concerning is, and some of the players said this and so forth, they got up 17-3, and they basically let the foot off the gas. So my question would be, yes, I see improvement with this LSU team. It could be a really nice year. But Trev, one thing they've got to get back to doing is they've got to put the hammer down in the fourth quarter and learn how to win games like this. That frankly would have helped them immeasurably. And again, give USC credit, give their defense credit, Miller Moss too. In spite of it wasn't perfect, but that was a really good game for a Sunday night for the SEC.
Yeah, again, LSU with that 17-13 lead there going into the fourth quarter, you figure this is where LSU exerts itself,
Yes.
flexes that muscle with that offensive line. We heard Will Campbell, the left tackle, talk about it. He had a couple of penalties in the game Sunday night. That was a big thing in this too. Too many penalties, too many dumb mistakes by LSU. But you said it as well. Southern Cal, was taking a lot of this to heart throughout the week.
No
And not
doubt.
just the week, but you talk about a turbulent off season for Lincoln
Yes.
Riley after the way last season ended, even with the bowl win. Boy, I'm sure Lincoln Riley and his guy kept receipts on all of that.
Yeah.
And give Anton Lynn a lot of credit. It wasn't even for me conceptually the changes that SC has made on that side of the ball. It was the intangibles that SC played with. We saw people striking people, and some toughness from Southern Cal that it desperately needed on that side of the ball. But ultimately, when it came down to it, when I thought LSU would take control of this game, the fourth quarter, and it looked like Emory was getting going at the running back position behind that offensive line. Instead, SC closes out LSU with a 14-3 fourth quarter to get the job done. The good news for LSU, you still got UCLA coming up down the road, so still a chance to get a win over an LA team before the month of September comes to a close. Hey, Brent, I think that's just about going to do it. I think we've got it covered, and I think we'll have more coming up later in the week as we get you ready for week 2 of Southeastern Conference action. Is there already a game maybe coming up this week that you got circled there in that notebook of yours, that thick notebook of Brent Beaird's?
Well, and I'm sure that Trav, the hype for that Texas-Michigan game is going to be off the charts all week, and I'm guessing, how happy will that ticket man be about this game, Trav?
Yeah, the Ann Arbor ticket man, he's got it big because you got a team coming off a national championship, so probably even Fresno State for the Maize and Blue Saturday night was a good number on that ticket. Then you got Texas in town this week. College game day going to be there. Then in, I think, a couple weeks, you've got SC making the trip to Ann Arbor. So it's good to be that Ann Arbor ticket man right about now. Now, Texas could maybe soften up that SC ticket because I'm thinking Texas could go in there and maybe win by double digits over this this Michigan team. We'll talk about that more later in the week. Until then, Brent, man, as always, great stuff from you, and appreciate you being here with us on Second Helping. And it's a lot of fun. I look forward to a lot more good stuff in the league coming up this week.
Always, brother. Look forward to it. Have a great week. And we need to be checking in on Pops during the week. And he may be done with his Gators by now.
Well, I asked him before the season for a record on his Gators, and he said the Gators wouldn't win a game. So he's on it right now. I mean,
he is, isn't he?
I said, well, what about Samford? And he goes, hey, they're a pretty good team. I said, Pops. So this did nothing. No. This did nothing for Pops' attitude.
I'm sure it didn't.
Where the Gators are concerned. We hope we've helped your attitude on a Monday morning. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Hit that notification bell while you're at it. That way you're alerted to all of our content as it drops. And maybe a thumbs up for Brent and myself. We'd appreciate that tremendously too. So for Brent Beaird, Travis Reier, thanking you once again for joining us. And until next time, so long, everybody.